think the presentations and discussions so far has raised a number of issues that we should revisit. But also I think we should try to focus a little bit on what are the sort of the implications also in the context of the EU or ASEAN or Europe, Southeast Asia. Of course there could be a lot of attention given to policy learning, you know, what is the best lessons, the good practices in Europe that maybe Southeast Asian countries can learn from, and that is sort of the most obvious one. But there may be a number of other issues that we have been pointing to, and I would like to kickstart the discussion actually with asking Naim here from his sort of advantage point of coming from Malaysia. What is your impression in terms of what are the sort of the main points that you would take on from this? And what are the sort of the main questions maybe also that remains that would remain also as challenges, as the problems that you feel you should give more attention to? So any quick reaction from you, and I'm not asking for any long speech. You know, what are the sort of the main points that you would pull out of your bike pack?
Thank you, Sven. This workshop indeed provide me a better understanding on what is public procurement for innovation, as well as pre-commercial procurement. From the presentation also, I have obtained a number of critical success factors in stimulating innovation via public procurement. Among others, which strike me is the political buy-in, the need of identifying a niche area or a niche market before deciding to have a certain policy in stimulating innovation, and also on the technical capacity of the public procurer. However, I think there is a need to localize the approach. You know, the approach that have been undertaken in Europe maybe not suit to our local condition, as we have also our own public procurement policy that take into account the social development agenda. So in this aspect, Diana also highlighted the importance of political buy-in. In your presentation just now also highlighted the importance of political buy-in. So what is the turning point for us? You know, in order for us to get the political buy-in before we can proceed with such policy related to public procurement. That is my first question. The second question: who is going to determine the niche area? The government or the industry? And if not, how we are going to actually to leverage both parties in achieving a practical niche area? And another question is related to the legal requirement. As mentioned by Max, you highlighted the importance of exogenous institutional, whereby we need the government instrument in the form of regulatory, for instance, to kickstart or to spark the program or the project. So how we are going to deal with all these three matters? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think that also triggers sort of another point, and that is linked to the ASEAN Economic Community. I think, for example, Lena's presentation gave an interesting example of how EU regulation in a single market actually may or will often have serve a role as a context, as a what shall I say, Well, even though the most interesting example took place before that, but still, that regulatory environment. Do you think that the emerging economic community now in ASEAN will actually have a positive impact on the member states in ASEAN's ability to use this kind of approach?
Yes, definitely yes. But yeah, collaboration is very important because different countries will have different needs. We should come on with one direction, which every party will get the benefit.
So, let's open up anyone. Jakob, you.
Well, I actually think we have together, you yourself in your own presentation actually, we have so many theoretical arguments and empirical examples of all the different kinds of benefits of public procurement innovation that I mean, I know there are political realities out there, but there is a strong political case for a buy-in, I think, in terms of the cost benefit of all of this. When you compare to all the investment in research, how much you invest in research, where you maybe 10% out of your research project that you finance really lead to something economically viable. We still think it's important to do so. Of course we are. And here, whenever we have a failure, we think the policy is dead. See, it doesn't work. We don't touch it again. I think we just have to. And you in your country, apparently, you seem to be activists, have to make the argument, because it is a compelling argument. It is linked to your second point, who defines the niche? First of all, you seem to be in a regulatory environment where you are a bit more flexible in defining certain niches and in targeting, giving 10% discount to your local suppliers and all of that. So you can make a compelling argument why it is important for your local economy, but defining the niche more broadly, I mean, this innovation and technology platforms, platforms to discuss, to make explicit and visible what are political priorities in the years to come, and what are industrial pipelines, and where does Malaysia have really something to offer, to try to get this match together, only for a selected number of areas. For strategic procurement, I'm not talking about general procurement as such, to make them all more innovative. That's a different program, that's learning, but that's a different program. But you can of course select certain strategic procurement areas where you have clear societal need and potential for economic development. It doesn't all have to be 100% Malaysian, indigenous. I think there's a lot of, we have seen the cases in Estonia, there's another case where there is a lot of local benefit, even if some foreign companies benefit as well. But I think with innovation and technology platform, getting a discourse running, what are our 10, 15 years priorities, and what is the pipeline of industry, what can we develop, can help a lot.
Yeah, basically from the CNET project perspective, one of our important approaches is to think kind of in an ASEAN member state policy-making mindset. So what can be done in terms of support instruments, right? And we have a huge variety of possibilities in the region. So if we take Singapore and maybe also Malaysia is a bit kind of the more the country with the least room for maneuver for programs. And now think about the second tier, so to speak, Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines. My question would be, what is your opinion as experts on where to start? I mean, I collected a few fragments, so there is this importance of the political backing that was mentioned several times, the challenges of interagency cooperation that Jakob mentioned, also not being too ambitious, as Lena said, and also on the kind of in the adaptive PPI side, identify the moment where to jump in and where and when. And another aspect I'm thinking of, for instance, looking at systems like Thailand, one of their biggest challenges is to turn a SME-dominated economy towards more innovation. And as we all know and discussed as well, it's hard for the SMEs, they have their day-to-day jobs. So the question is, maybe a question for clarification, whether I understood correctly that to some degree PCP could be used as an instrument to activate SMEs a little bit in that direction, and a tool that is also possible to be used by the, so to say, science, technology, innovation agencies. So most, we know, they don't have, science, technology ministries, they don't have the big procurement budgets. But PCP might be something where they could start, in the sense there is something they can do with their budget, it's something they're in a way used to doing because it's close to supply side things, and it's something where they could work a bit towards SMEs' needs if some additional policy measures are secured addressing SMEs. So that's kind of a question to the round.
And for Malaysia, we are in the midst of formulating our long-term public procurement policy, which will also integrate the public procurement promoting innovation. So I really hope that we will get good support from all the plot in formulating the policy.
Now, first of all, I did, of course, say one should not be over-ambitious, but maybe it was not the right expression, because I like ambition. It's just that the ambition should be based on capabilities. So one should not be ambitious in a way to become silly, but one should be ambitious. And for the instruments you're asking for, I think the idea of looking at prizes might be an interesting story. So innovation prizes, not in the sense of prizes for being innovative, but prizes for coming up with ideas for innovation procurement. That would be interesting for small-scale innovation adapted to the local economy in the countries you called second tier. I mean, Thailand has some very interesting innovation in very specific niches. I'm referring to, jewelry based on flowers and gold plating of flowers and things like that. These are small companies, could make a huge success in international markets. And they are innovative, but of course that's small-scale, incremental innovation. And if you come up with prizes, prizes in the sense, whoever manages to do that and that will get the first prize. That might be an idea to investigate, and I can send you some papers in this direction. It's not a well-researched topic, it's rather recent, but it's promising.
Max first and then Sarah.
Yeah, I'd like to comment on your second question. I think there are lots of issues that emerges when you try to answer it. And one is how you look at public procurement. Is it as a sourcing device where public agencies procure things they need to deliver the service they are actually there to deliver? Or is it an innovation policy tool where you want these effects of innovation or support of your domestic firms or whatever? And I think, of course, it can be either of these extremes. But there is maybe sometimes a tendency that we think of the policy side and not so much, which is, I think, the reality in most places, that procurers, they are there to do what their organization needs them to do in order to deliver their service. Then this dichotomy, in a way, connects back to your nice case there. I'm a little bit... I'm working on your notion of non-intended, because I think for many procurers they don't really think, maybe now through these discussions that have evolved, but basically they are there to source things which are needed, and sometimes they become innovations in a policy maker's perspective as well. But many times I think they are the successful ones. If we try to impose these policy instruments without there is a genuine need. No one will use the product even if it gets money, and it will really chances, I would argue, for success in this user diffusion adoption sense would be lesser. And then we have this tension between innovation and support of local firms. From an innovation point of view, you should go for the best firms, which would be you buy from foreign companies if you have if your own domestic knowledge is not on that level. Just one further dichotomy concerns this money thing. The discussion here has tended to involve or equal chances of success with big money. I still think these small, close, shorter loop learning projects might be as successful, which I think, well, maybe not small, but at least it was a procurement project within one country. Another thing is catalytic procurement, which we have not, a word we haven't used so much today. There are lots of examples where public procurers have almost just with the reward has been like a diploma or a very symbolic amount of money, created new technology, new environmental versions of copy machines or other. There is a quite often mentioned case from Sweden where they procured a 3-layer window where the environmental agencies, they didn't really have any money, but they transformed the market because one supplier was able to develop this new innovative window. And that leads to these problems or things needs to be considered. And I just want to finally say something about to determine, which I think Lena's case also allude to in a way, and which we can on the other. Well, I should start with saying that there was no determinant there. There was a need. If you look at an attempt in the European context, where people try to determine this, it's the lead market initiative, which was based on basically von Hippel kind of thinking that you have a lead user and this evolves to a lead market. Although those things happen, it doesn't say necessarily that it is possible to create them. And I think that is the experience from the lead market initiative. Although they say that, we didn't have so much money, so we couldn't, then have the money argument again, by the way. But there are some explanations why it didn't work as intended. But one central thing would be that it is extremely hard to actually take on the role to determine. You can't know until you know in retrospect. So that goes for the creating the opportunity. It becomes like a supply side conclusion at the end that you should make people have the skills to do it. But well, the challenge I think is it's very hard to take that role. That's what if I would have to position myself here, I would say that is tricky.
Also related to Matt's response, can we see that we are not determining the niche area, but the niche area is based on what we presently need? Can I see that? Let's see, the government now needs the ICT, for instance. Yeah, so that is considered as a niche area, or how we are going to formulate this the scenario.
I mean, in your case, because you're so focused on developing your local economy, this would only be one part of the coin. I mean, I said it earlier. You would define a niche based on what is it the government needs, but there are many things the government needs. So you can't do all the things the same level at the same time. So you could, of course, be a bit more, focus a bit on those areas where there is a certain level of capacity, innovation capacity in your country already. So it's supply and demand. Can I make two comments?
Yeah, sure.
General ones. One on
yeah.
Alexander, to answer to one on Alexander, and then to respond to the lead market initiative. First of all, I'm not sure if everybody knows what the lead market initiative was. So it's a bit tricky. It was an initiative by the European Commission starting in 2007 or 8, and then it has fallen asleep again. But the idea was to pick certain areas. I think they had six areas where they had a public procurement, where they had a mix of tools led by public procurement of innovation, but then also regulation, standardization, and other and legislation, as they call it, and other supporting mechanisms in order to create lead markets in Europe. That means we have forefront demand, we buy something, we create the framework conditions so that it works, including supply conditions if needed, and then we do it in areas where there is a high likelihood that other areas outside Europe have a similar need, and therefore we'll buy it in the future. That's the lead market initiative. Highly complex, but I wouldn't be that critical, as critical as Max. I think it was a money and commitment issue. It was too complex, but if you pick areas in terms of strategic, you have to be strategic. You have to make choices. It's just a matter of you have to make choices if you do strategic procurement. And why not choose an area where you have a combination of a high likelihood of the similar future needs in other areas and a high likelihood of your suppliers being able to deliver innovation. If you combine the two, you have a higher likelihood to create lead markets. There is no guarantee, but there is no guarantee in anything in innovation policy. So I think it was a very clever instrument, and there are all kinds of reasons why it didn't work. And the fact that it worked in 2 or 3 areas very nicely, there has been an evaluation done by Oxford Group. In 2 or 3 areas it worked really nicely, in 2 or 3 it failed. Is that now policy failure? I'm not so sure. The other point, you said, where should we start? Maybe PCP, because we can do it through our supply side mechanisms. We have these agencies, and it's very close to supply side, and we know what to do. So, well, that is exactly the kind of thinking that is dangerous, because then you take the PCP and do what Lena and I think is often done with PCP, and Max doesn't, which is, it is just another supply side instrument. It's just done somewhere, someone has a budget, and it is a risk and venture capital scheme for SMEs maybe, because it is often for small companies, and then they develop something, and then you hope something happens. But we do it in MOS because they know how to do it, they deal with supply side, and everything is fine, we just call it PCP. So if you do it in these countries, then my strong advice would be to do it in a way that the departments, health, transport, energy, what have you, are in the driver's seat, or at least fully committed into it. That there is joint budget, there is not an additional budget, and they have nothing to do with it. But those who define the need for the call for a PCP should also be those who actually pay the thing, and are also involved in the implementation, so that there's a much higher likelihood that actually procurement later on happens. If you just put it in MOS, let's do PCP, let's see what happens, nothing will happen.
Okay, just a few considerations. There is also the high-level expert group on the KETs, the Key Enabled Technologies. That I think has also some links with what we are discussing. Then on the area of the clusters, I think some countries are well advanced, like the old concept of Michael Porter, and then Christian Cattell, and then there is even a network that's the TCI, International Network on Clusters. And countries like US, they are very developed already. But countries like China, they have, for instance, in the Zhongguancun Science Park, focus on ICT. In Pudong, in Zhejiang, focus on the biotechnology sector. And then in the ASEAN countries like Malaysia, they have the multimedia corridor that was more focused on ICT. But that was not a successful case in the end. So that we have successful cases of clusters, and then some cases that tried to be successful and they were not for a number of reasons. Then in the area of technology transfer, the country of Israel was not mentioned. I think they do a very good job on the area of technology transfer, and also on the part of having the large companies really making investments on the SMEs and really fostering all the technology development. In the part of the creation of funds to foster the development of SMEs, I think Singapore is now putting a lot of effort, and also China in creating specific funds that really can foster the development of SMEs, and linking also with venture capital and with the business angels. I think that's an area that's also developing in the ASEAN countries.
I would like to also raise, go back again to I would like to go back again to this mix with the supply side, in the sense that what would be the message to many of these countries who have, let's say, GERD, the overall expenditures in R&D down to, how much is it in many cases? 0.2, 0.3, 0.5. Very, very small. So what would be the, so that is, given that size of the traditional R&D supply side stimulus, which is so shallow in many cases. The only, of course, Singapore is very different, but then Malaysia is sort of the mid player. But then most of the ASEAN countries are very, very, very poor in that sense. So what would be this, let's say, the message to the countries, in that context? What would you say? To leave it out. For example, many of these countries also have the presence of multinational companies. I remember a discussion in Norway. We had a discussion, especially in this same context, actually. What is a Norwegian company? And of course, an Elfa-Paten or another multinational company who is registered in Norway as a Norwegian company, the daughter company, is a Norwegian company, is a Norwegian employees, is Norwegian this and that. So is that, what kind of, do you accept companies like that, or do they have to be indigenous in the real term? Because in some of these countries, the real innovators are also the multinational players in existence there, participating in the value chains that are sort of crossing the globe. So these are two open questions that I'd like to raise.
In the context of Malaysia, our Industrial Act stipulated that not 100% belongs to the local entity, but at least, if I'm not mistaken, at least more than 49% is actually belonging to the local entity. This is actually to promote the technology transfer between our country and the multinational company. So we are not too strict, that means not 100% belongs to the local, but we also open it in order to have the transfer of technology.
Maybe just to extend on your question, because I find it very relevant and would be interested in hearing the answers around the table. Because also in these South Asian countries where the GRD to GDP rate is so low, it doesn't mean that there wouldn't be massive public investment. It's just not necessarily in these areas. So one approach would be to see demand-side innovation measures as a way of connecting to this side of big, urban infrastructure investments, for instance, where there is a lot of money that goes into that.
Good point, Lena.
No, just to, exactly on the direction that Alex is mentioning, this applies to Europe as well. I mean, because of Maastricht criteria and the austerity budget, it's not a coincidence that demand-side policies are coming to the surface now, because it is a way to substitute for stagnating GERD to GDP.
think
Yes.
being from ASEAN, like SMEs are more involved in these sectors. So my just point, like, is it still to be developed, like the policymakers? There are lack of a lot of policies. There is no policy proper that how that can be translated. Even small enterprises or medium enterprises have been developing. Like I know in the food sector, suppose a lot of works have been done. A lot of companies are small working, but they never have chance to or bring to the innovations to the upper level. Maybe lacking of even in the second tier or the first tier countries in this region. So how it can be, as academician or the researchers, can we suggest to these policy makers as what can be helping from the European Union, suppose, to bring to the ASEAN? That can be one of the from this workshop what I have been listening to this morning. I mean, it is very effective for me, and also can be translated from this side to giving to the ASEAN region or as a whole Asia could be effective.
What also strikes me is also that in terms of a policy dialogue, this project is also supposed to underpin the policy dialogue between ASEAN and the EU. And every year we participate, or we're supposed to participate, also with inputs to this dialogue. Normally people from DGRTD meeting up with their counterparts in the ASEAN Cost Committee, in the Committee of Science and Technology. And I was also wondering, maybe this case is also an interesting thing to bring into such a policy dialogue to see if there is an interest in a take-up in for example in cost. And then of course this is a question mark because those people are on the, let's say, traditional Ministry of Science people. So how do we sort of bridge that? And I think we need to find a way maybe to expand the playing field a little bit, and find a way also for these lessons that we have been discussing today, to find a way to the proper find a proper interface with the on the ASEAN side too, since this is now being integrated much more in the research and innovation policy here than maybe is the case in ASEAN Cost. So that is sort of an imbalance in terms of the policy dialogue and the learning that may take place between these two. I don't know how...
Yeah, exactly. I think if you recall, we had this in Brussels, the kickoff meeting of CUNET 2. We had the meeting with ASEAN Cost also. And exactly same questions were raised when sitting both sides. And the ASEAN Cost was very much mindset, like, okay, we have been doing what we have been doing. And then the European side, suppose asking the question, but what is the research going on that is not exactly what we need as a societal challenges? That was the questions coming there. So at this level, after 2 years, suppose what we can propose from this workshop, at least something we can give to, okay, these are the policies or need a research to do, particular for that region, that can be developed. I mean, you have done last year some surveys, but more what can be done for that region that can be easily to procure or innovation can be implemented, specifically focused for that region. That's just my point actually.
Maybe one comment, something where you can maybe could learn from. There was a European project, and what was this? Not ERANET, but in some other net, where policymakers from small countries in Europe joined forces and exchanged about public procurement of innovation. But they said, like you said, we don't have the sophisticated market. We have a very small market, so we are not attractive as doing demand-side policies. Is there anything in terms of public procurement for us? And so they brainstormed. They developed all kinds of intelligence. I mean, they had a survey in ministries and so on to understand what is it they actually could do. How can we define a niche? How can we join forces? Can we maybe define niches so that because we are 2 or 3 islands and coastal areas, maybe we have specific needs that then can be sold elsewhere. So you might want to look how they organize themselves, what kind of stuff they have produced. I think there's something to learn from. It's ERA Prism, it's still on the web. Find it called ERA Prism.
I think in the context of Malaysia, we don't lack of policy. We have many policy, but we lack of policy coherence. You know, how we are going to actually to support public procurement policy with national innovation policy, for instance. So we have to take all this sectoral policy to support each other and to have a policy coherence, so that the GERD, will indirectly increase by having this policy coherent.
Okay.
Okay, a
Lena?
small final word in
Yes.
this discussion. I'm not sure the innovative part of public procurement will be accounted for by statistical services as research or innovation expenditure. So probably even the most successful demand-side instruments will not increase GERD.
Okay.
I would say I'm not sure, I don't know.
Let me then just briefly sum up, if there are no other issues to be tabled. You're closing in on 4 o'clock. So I think we have landed, or at least raised a number of issues to take back. We will produce a small report in addition to this video. But I think you started also off with actually summing up some of the main issues, about the importance of policy support or buy-in. I think also the idea of call it priority niche, but it is much about strategic capability and strategic intelligence and the ability to strategically give priority to certain areas where both the needs are evident, very clear, but also where there is a business community that actually is available to match and to take part. I was also, we haven't really touched upon it, but I mentioned in the beginning the importance of, let's say, global frameworks for and global regulations. I mentioned the Montreal Protocol. We have the other kinds of regulations. You mentioned it on your multi-level model, that there are formal regulatory, let's say, machineries that also have an implication for this, and even you could also think of this as I lost my word now, lost the direction of my thinking, but anyway, so the question is how to develop these multilateral regimes, regulatory systems. And I think there's a new interest in this field of multilateral cooperation, multilateral funding, multilateral regulation. Also to the extent that my good friend Keith Smith and others also working in this field raised the issue of, is there a need for, let's say, another kind of global governance in terms of global innovation council, things like this. I don't know. This is far-fetched, but still, this public procurement issue is still sort of domestic, national issue, even though we have touched upon the importance of thinking cross-nationally, cross borders, not both in terms of procurers, but also in terms of allowing cross-national participation from the industry side. A bit of leakage is not necessarily bad.
We didn't really mention here also the role of the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, particularly in the ASEAN countries, that they also can have a role in terms of public procurement.
Can I maybe muddy the water a bit?
Yes.
I'm slightly skeptical when it comes to the transnational cooperation of public procurement, public procurers in this context. I said it earlier in the day, transnational cooperation is quite a process. Now, in a way, don't we jump the gun if there doesn't seem to be a culture and capabilities to do public procurement of innovation properly in national settings in many countries that are involved. And we already ask for transnational cooperation. I'm not sure if that's the best use of the transnational community to jump for a couple of transnational corporations, 2 or 3 of which might succeed, or it's maybe better to try to establish transnational learning and exchange rather than trying to go for complete transnational collaboration. It might work here and there, but I'm not sure if that should be the main aim at this point, because there's so much work to be done in order to convince all of players and enable them that this is a good thing to do. I think it's a long way. So I'm not sure if we should jump directly to transnational collaboration as one of the main goals in terms of really doing it together. One thing is learning, but doing it together. If we see how national the agendas are, I would see it could actually be counterproductive, because then in terms of political backing, all of a sudden it has to, what does that mean? We open up, we do it together. I don't think it fits into your kind of understanding of what it should be. So,
We take that and record the skepticism by
or what am I final word?
No, but you are quite right. You're absolutely quite right. So, but I have this idea of actually bringing forward this idea, and then maybe this transnational thing in this context should be limited to capacity building.
Yes, I think that's right.
Capacity building as well as harmonizing, I think.
Yeah, things like this. But still, it's important, I think, especially when we talk about ASEAN, which is a group of 10 countries that still has an agenda to cooperate. Anyway, I would like to close this now. If there is no more skepticisms around the table. I appreciate and very thankful for everyone that has participated. All of you have come from far, and even you from very, very far. It is very nice of you. I hope that also that this has been beneficial for you. With this, I would like to close the workshop. I thank you everyone for the participation and contributions, and I wish you all a nice trip home.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.